everyone! Thank you so much for joining me today to create this otter card featuring the exclusive Christmas Like No Otter set by Fawn. This exclusive set is available only at Simon Says Stamp, and it's only available for a limited time. So if you like it, make sure you order it soon before it sells out. The otters in the set are so adorable. So let's get started on the card. We're first going to create an ink blended background. I'm using the Distress Oxide ink in the Broken China. It's just a really pretty blue, and it's perfect for making like water scenes, so the otters are going to look great on it. I'm also using my mini ink blending tool to just ink a white piece of cardstock. I'm going to just kind of use circular motions and spread the ink all over. Once I'm done with that, I used a spray bottle with just some water on it, misted it on, and I just used a tissue that I had down there to wipe off the ink, and it creates a really cool effect on the background. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and we're next going to die cut the frame to frame the scene. I'm using the outside in stitched rectangle dies by Fawn. I'm just lining it up there. I use the larger size, and then I put a smaller size on the inside so that when it cuts, it pops out this frame, which you'll see here. So I'm just going to take that off. It pops out a piece of white cardstock, which we can use later on another card, but then what we really want to use is this frame that pops out of here too. And it's neat because it has stitching on the outside and the inside, so it'll look great for the scene. After we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and stamp the images that we'll be using on this card. So I just used a piece of white cardstock in my mini Misty, and then I can just lay out the images that will be used in this card. The otters holding hands there is my favorite, so that's why I went with this for this card today. And I'm also using the seaweed there, the hearts, and the bow that are included in the set. I inked the images with the Fawn jet black ink because I'm going to color it later with Copic markers, and that works really well so that the colors don't bleed from the Copic markers. So I went ahead and stamped those images, and I also needed another seaweed and another heart stamped for the scene, so we went ahead and stamped another one of those. I'm also using the Banner-tastic set by Fawn to help to highlight the sentiment for the card. So I went ahead and stamped the banner for that. And then while I had it here, I was going to stamp the sentiment as well. The sentiment on this card today is "To my significant otter." And I lined it up there on the banner. And then I wanted to kind of straighten it up a little bit so that it wasn't as curved on the banner. So I readjusted it there on the mini Misty. Looked at it, see how I liked it, and it needed to be adjusted a little bit more, so I fixed that. And it just kind of helped line it up because the sentiments are curved in the set, which looks great for the water, but I wanted it to fit inside that banner, so that's why I adjusted it a little bit. I then used my Memento black ink and stamped the sentiment and stamped that inside the banner. All right, and then once we're done with that, we can start coloring. So for the otters, for the one otter, I used a warm gray 1 and warm gray 3, and I just used a pretty basic coloring my Copics. I'm not a pro or anything, but for me, I lay down the light color and then go over the dark color just where I want the little shadows. So for my otters, I did shadows on his head, under his chin, on his feet, and at his tail. So I lay down the light color, go over in the dark, and just kind of blend that out on the otters. For the other otter, I used the W3 and the BV23. I didn't have another warm gray color to go with it, so I have this blue-violet color that worked out well, and when I blended it out, you can't tell it was a blue-violet, so I thought it looked really well for the otters. For the bow and the hearts, then I used the RV13 and RV55. I used darker color on the inside of the bow and blended it out with the lighter colors. And then on the hearts, I did the same thing, and I just added a little bit of dark pink along the right edge of the hearts and blended those out for all of the hearts. Next, I'm going to color the seaweed. And for the seaweed, I used the YG03 and YG63. And the darker color I just used on the inside of the seaweed just to add a little bit of shading and blended it out with the YG03 for all the seaweed. And I usually use those colors for like trees and seaweeds. I just like that combination of those greens. So after I was done coloring, I went ahead and used the coordinating dies to die cut all of the images. You just lined up the dies on the image and place a little bit of washi tape to hold it in place. And after you get everything set up, you can just run it through the die cut machine. So here I'm just lining up the die for the otters and making sure everything's lined up correctly and taping it down. So once I have all the images die cut, then we're going to go ahead and attach the frame to the background. The background piece of paper was a little bit bigger than the frame, so I used my paper trimmer and just trimmed off a little bit on the sides and the top so that it would fit behind the frame without going over the edge. So I trimmed off a little bit there, and then it was the right size for that. So now we can attach it to the background. I originally was going to just use a tape runner, but I decided I wanted to add a little bit more dimension, so I used foam tape to attach the frame. I just added tape there all around the edge of the frame and cut off a little bit there. It was going to hang off, so once we get it all taped down, you can remove the backing on the foam tape. And I like to use a lot of foam tape in my cards to just add some extra dimension, make things pop and stand out on the cards. And it's an easy way to add more detail than adding more products and stuff. So I went ahead and I attached the background there, so that's all set. And now we can go ahead and arrange the images to attach to the card. So I kind of just laid it out where I wanted everything to go, and just decided where I wanted it to go before I actually taped it down and glued it down. So once I liked where I had everything, I went ahead and added some foam tape to the banner, and then I taped that down. And then I went ahead and I used Tombow Multi-Mono Liquid Glue to attach the seaweed to the card. I used a little bit of foam tape then right here to attach the bow to make that pop up a little bit. And then I also used foam tape on the otters. So I went ahead and added some foam tape there, attached those down. Then I wasn't quite sure where I wanted the heart, so I laid those on the card, and then I kind of just moved it around to decide where I wanted it. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to cut off the smaller heart so that I could move it to a different spot. So I cut off that small heart, and then I just kind of cut the edges to make it a little smoother edge instead of the jagged part. So that's what I was doing off camera, just kind of smoothing up the part on the heart. And then I just was rearranging, trying to decide where exactly I wanted all those hearts to be. I knew I wanted them on there somewhere, I wasn't quite sure where exactly. So I'm just moving it around there. And I ultimately decided that that's where I wanted them to go. So once I knew where I wanted them to go, I used liquid glue again and add a little bit of dab of glue on the back and attach that to the background. Add a little bit more here. It's hard sometimes using the little pieces that kind of have a mind of their own. They're hard to grab. So I know some people use tweezers, and that probably is really helpful to use for those really small images. So we're just going to add a little bit of glue here and attach the hearts so that everything is glued down. And before we finish the card, I forgot that I wanted to add a little bit of color to the otter's cheeks. So I'm using an R20 Copic marker, just add a little bit of blush to the cheeks of the otters, just to give it a little bit more detail. And then I also went over it with a white gel pen, just to add a little bit more detail to the cheeks. I think it just adds a something fun detail, or a little fun detail, and it makes it really cute for the otters. So add that. And once we're done with that, we can attach the panel to the card base. And I just used a standard A2 size. It's 4.25 by 4.25, by 5.5 inches. I used a tape runner there on the back of the card panel and just attach that to the card base. And there we go. It's all set. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more inspiration. Thanks. Bye.